Something we need to do as a society and as a planet is shift the conversation so that it centers on the more objective, reality-based concerns regarding the downsides of dogs and their ownership. From a personal standpoint, I don't find dogs appealing at all. Never really did. Even when I was generally more accepting of their presence, they were kind of just there. And even then, there were always things I disliked about dogs, things that repulsed or annoyed me, for instance. But I never hated them until dog culture got so out of control that dogs are now inescapable. The ridiculous, unsolicited memes and online posts, the fact that one can't even have a conversation at work or elsewhere without inevitably hearing someone go on about how obsessed they are with dogs or how great they are. To add to this, the ads for dogs are everywhere. This very website is rife with it. Much of the internet may as well be a dog propaganda outlet, with other forms of entertainment available as an afterthought. However, I can say that at one time, dogs were, at least mostly, regarded as pets or working animals, not family. They weren't viewed, as seems to be the case today, by many out-of-touch people, as non-talking, barking, shit-eating humans. They were not considered children, or deities as they are today. Through social media, aggressive advertising, and rampant pro-dog propaganda, as well as indoctrination within dog-infested homes, a lot of this ideology is drilled and drummed into the heads of future dog worshippers everywhere, unfortunately from a very young age. In her 1978 book, The Dog Crisis, author Iris Nowell had already noted in the late 70s that dog culture was getting out of hand and that there is and was a dog and pet population explosion. She noted an increased frequency in dog bites and attacks, especially on children, and in the very beginning of the book, she expressly stated how uncomfortable it was speaking to dog lovers in a way that was not favorable to dogs. She stated that she often felt as if she had to take a loyalty pledge. And here's the thing about dog ownership. It creates clear dangers and inconveniences for others. It should not be viewed as a harmless personal choice or some innocuous hobby. Owning a dog necessarily means imposing on others, creating problems for the general public, which is to say, the larger community where individual dog nutters live. A person's decision to own a specific kind of animal should never be allowed to harm or burden others. Or, to put it another way, the human right to safety and peace of mind should absolutely be prioritized over the right or ability of someone else to own a dog. If you ask a supposed dog expert about dogs, they will never tell you that dogs are harmful. If you ask ChatGPT about dogs, you will find that it never leads with the risks and harms first. If you ask any AI about the dangers of dogs, you will find that it downplays the risks and comes off as soft-selling the real dangers associated with their presence and their ownership. Something we need to do as a society and as a planet is shift the conversation so that it centers on the more objective, reality-based concerns regarding the downsides of dogs and their ownership. From a personal standpoint, I don't understand why so many take such a soft stance on dogs when there are so many objective harms caused uniquely by their ownership. Even ChatGPT conceded that these harms should not be ignored in favor of a more idealized view of the human-dog relationship, and that is exactly how it was phrased. So it is acknowledged that there is an idealized view there. And yet, it nonetheless continues to present this annoying, supposedly balanced perspective on dogs, where it constantly mentions their supposed benefits, bullshit about training or socialization, and responsible ownership being potential solutions to all these problems and the damn history of their domestication. In other words, you will almost never get a real answer to whether dogs are actually good or bad, and almost no one seems to want to admit what the best solution would be. With no dogs around, there will be no more problems related to dogs and their existence. If there are no dogs, there are no problems of the kind that dogs uniquely create. That is indisputable. But it seems it is impossible for society at present to even consider a reality where dogs simply aren't a factor. Yet, for so many of us, this is an aspiration and the obvious solution to a unique set of problems that could easily just not exist. On top of everything else, the last thing we need is dogs barking, biting, intruding, annoying people, spreading allergies and infections, killing people, and being the eco-destroyers that they are. This bizarre dog craze is equal parts social mania and a deliberate effect of the dog and pet industrial complex. And here is a major problem. Society has long over-prioritized dog ownership without adequately considering the public impact. Way more people need to challenge others to think about whether dogs have a place in modern society at all, given that their presence consistently jeopardizes human safety or peace of mind. To say nothing of the impact dog and pet ownership has on public health as a whole and the environment. In most regards, it seems we value the right to live in spaces that are free from unnecessary harm or disturbance. But dogs, for whatever inexplicable reason, are the magical exception. A complete ban on dog ownership, at least in urban areas, aka towns and cities, would be the most effective solution to all dog-originated conflict. It's the most practical, straightforward, and obvious answer. Unfortunately, it isn't the most popular or likely, at least at this moment in time. Realistically, it's not even unfeasible, and it really depends on society's willingness to implement it. Basically, the feelings of dog worshippers and dog sympathizers is all that stands in the way of social progress in this regard. This point is super important, so I really do have to reiterate it. There's no good reason to own a dog at all in this day and age, especially if you are living in the city. This obscene, extreme, and most unseemly culture continues to proliferate, but it is impossible to justify, and the costs are simply way too high. Again, just from a public health and safety standpoint, dogs are awful. And ultimately, the core issue is, as always, the presence of dogs itself. Remember how I mentioned ChatGPT earlier? What sort of responses do you think you'll get if you ask an AI if dogs are bad for society? There's something that's literally called Ask AI, and I did just that. This right here, this is the response. You can pause the video to read it yourself. But, spoiler alert, nowhere does it mention anything about the numerous negative externalities that are obviously associated with and caused directly by dog ownership. As you can see, it leads with the purported benefits. And while it does say at the end that dog ownership has both positive and negative aspects, it doesn't even mention anything about dog bites, allergies, dog attacks, or hygiene. The only downside it seems to consider is the financial cost of maintaining one of these mutts, or several, and this is only something dog nutters have to deal with. What about the downsides for the rest of us who do not own, nor care to own, dogs? I pressed ChatGPT for some real answers, and this is what it came back with.
Dog ownership, while largely beneficial in many ways, can also have some detrimental impacts on society, depending on various factors. Here are a few of the negative aspects to consider.
Now, before going over these negative aspects, notice how the very first thing it says is something about how they are largely beneficial, which of course they are not. And also notice how it says it can have detrimental impacts, depending on various factors. Let's just be clear here. Dog ownership does have detrimental impacts on society. This isn't hypothetical or theoretical. It is well established and observed on a daily basis by people everywhere. People know what at least some of these are. The most important factor to consider is whether dogs are in the picture or not. Are they present in a household, in society? If the answer is yes, then it is certain that they will cause problems. So, here are a couple of the things ChatGPT listed in terms of the quote, negative aspects to consider. The first thing it lists is environmental impact, which includes waste management. But notice that under health and safety concerns, it asserts that most dogs are well behaved. I have seen dog nutters try to similarly claim that most dogs in existence don't attack people, but there are several problems with this sort of thing. For starters, I don't know what study or survey has ever been conducted to determine the precise number of dogs that are aggressive towards people, whether they ever bite someone or not. Because, to be certain, this would give us a much more accurate representation of the problem. In terms of aggression, it's not just about people actually getting bitten. One major reason for there being less dog attacks than there would otherwise be is because dogs are thankfully contained much of the time. That being said, loose and free-roaming dogs have been a serious public health issue since time immemorial as well. Putting that aside, the fact is that dogs often aren't given the chance to inflict violence on more people. It should also be noted that dog bites and their attacks on people in general are severely underreported. One thing AI Overview got right is when it said the following:
Dog bites are significantly underreported, especially among children, with estimates suggesting that the actual number of bites could be many times higher than reported.
The third thing it listed was economic costs, but it didn't go into the costs to the general public, society at large, taxpayers, and so on. And I find this bit about phobias to be especially worthy of note. But before moving on, in terms of economic costs, it basically pointed out that dog ownership can be expensive, which is really an understatement considering how ridiculous it is that people would pay any amount to feed and maintain these awful things, to keep them around and so on. It also mentioned how dog-related emergencies or appointments can interfere with work and personal life. All very true, but that is all it said. But look at this bit about social impacts. Notice how when it states that not everyone is comfortable around dogs, it fails to mention that a big reason for this is that dogs are fanged predators with the capacity to bite in an instant, for no reason at all. It downplays the severity of allergies as well, since these can be so extreme that they go well beyond mere discomfort and, in some cases, can even trigger anaphylaxis. But the most offensive bit is where it tries to project people who wish to avoid dogs as people with a phobia. A phobia is an irrational fear, and there is nothing irrational about being averse to dogs, even afraid of them. It makes no mention of how people are also generally repulsed by dogs because of their odor and filth, as well as their intrusiveness. It is not an irrational phobia to want a dog-free grocery store, bus, train, mall, church, gym, workplace, apartment complex, or airplane. I make it a point to be specific with some of these, because these are all locations where dogs can be found. Yes, even places they have absolutely no business being in, such as the gym or a church. Or at least, these are places where one would least expect to encounter a fucking dog, of all things. Because obviously, dogs are out of place in all public spaces. They are just as out of place in a public park as they are in a private lot. They are just as out of place in a sauna or a beach. But it is especially absurd to encounter dogs in some of these areas, because there is absolutely no need for a dog to ever even know that such locations exist. Their owners should never once in their lives bring them there. Just to drive the point home, and so that it's very clear, dogs are just as out of place in schools as they are in hospitals, and they should never be permitted anywhere near such buildings. They are out of place anywhere on human settlements, and for various reasons should not be allowed anywhere within city limits, or really, any place where people are found. But frankly, when considering the true impact of dogs on society, there's no purported benefit that outweighs the worst of it, or even the many inconveniences. And we really don't need to look a lot further than stuff like this. Teenage girl brutally killed by a pack of dogs she was trying to help. Notice the title of this particular article. You just know these nutters felt compelled to describe the dogs as neglected. First of all, who gives a shit whether these voracious hellhounds were neglected or not? I don't know if there's any actual evidence that these dogs were neglected or not, but it's immaterial. It doesn't matter, and perfectly healthy and well-maintained dogs attack people for no reason all the time. Not only children, but adults as well. And I know healthy dog is an oxymoron. but you know what I mean. They're obviously trying to imply that, had these dogs not been neglected, this would not have happened. Just think back to the woman living in Italy who was torn apart by her brother's Rottweiler when she went to feed the vile, thankless abomination. Don't tell me that overgrown fecal factory was neglected. By and large, people grossly overstate the benefits of dogs, that is, when they aren't completely fabricating them. Dogs supposedly being able to detect bad people or being loyal are good examples. At the same time, they really downplay, even ignore or deny, the horrific impacts they clearly have on society as a whole. It is such a widespread tendency that even AI programs seem like they're unable to get real about dogs and their impacts on society. I ended up asking ChatGPT if it would tell a parent of a child killed by a dog that it's important to consider tradition and animal rights, because it kept spitting bullshit out about the history of the human and dog relationship and irrelevant crap about how dogs are capable of suffering or whatever. When it wasn't doing this, it was behaving more like a dog salesperson, like it wanted to convince me that dogs are not only good sometimes, but somehow necessary. Or else, it kept going back to pointlessly regurgitating nonsense about socialization and training. Now, others have made this point before as well. But what other animal which we regularly encounter do we need to, quote, socialize so that it is less violent towards us? The answer, of course, is none. Not the birds or various mammals you see and hear every day, or perhaps aren't aware are around you. Not the stray or loose pet cats, not the frogs or toads, not the snakes or any other reptiles. Even most insects actually avoid contact with us. The ones that are pests, not unlike dogs, we are honest about how annoying or harmful they can be, and we may even overstate their dangers. Many certainly do this with other predatory animals besides dogs. I can only wonder, when will we live in a world where the truth is finally accepted on a large enough scale that dogs can just not be a thing anymore? And then there are videos such as this one. This is a bizarre form of modern child sacrifice.